Hey y'all, it's Diana from the Dianaverse, and I am here today to do our new moon in Leo forecast. Just a reminder, if you enjoy these videos, please be sure to like and subscribe. That way you'll get notifications when they come out and you won't miss one. They come out about every 2 weeks on the full and new moons, so I look forward to sharing these with you. I'm going to be doing a workshop in early October. Everything's coming a little earlier this year, I've noticed. So early October, I'll be doing a deep dive with Hawthorne. It's going to be here locally, South Seattle, and be covering all aspects of working with hawthorn trees. It'll be berry time, so we will pick berries. We'll make things with the berries. We'll do medicine, we'll do food. We will do a plant journey to meet the spirit of hawthorn. Hawthorn is a sacred plant in Celtic spirituality. It's a fairy tree, so it should be fun. We're going to also do on the second, well, over the end of the first day, the second day, because it's going to be a 2-day workshop, natural dyes with hawthorn. I did that this spring, so it'll be interesting to see how the color comes out in the fall. It's a really beautiful dye that took to the wool with that. So there'll just be a whole bunch of things. We'll also do a hydrosol. It'll just be all the things that we could possibly come up with hawthorn, and I'm going to lead that in early October. Just a heads up so you can keep an eye out when I put the link on here. So we've got our Leo new moon. Happy birthday to all the Leos. Happy birthday to me, because tomorrow is my birthday on the 16th, right on the new moon. Your new moon, by the way, is your best time in your particular astrological sign when you can make your birthday wishes for the coming year, when you kind of set your intentions. That's your personal new year. So keep that in mind, whatever your sign is, for the new moon that comes up during your sign, and celebrate you and the things that you want to do in the world and how you shine your light. So Leo is all about shining that light, right? This is the most Leo moment of the year on the 16th tomorrow, because we have our new moon and it's right there with the sun, just shining the brightest part of the year. Leo is known as being the sunny sign. And it's hot, right? We've got the hottest weather going on, at least in my part of the country. In other places too. We have Venus traveling with that sun. So Venus has been retrograde for a couple of weeks, and it was Cazimi on the 13th, which means it was like right with the sun. So we can't see it from Earth when it's Cazimi with the sun, because it is just so right in front of the sun that the sun kind of blots it out. So we've got the feminine traveling with the masculine of the sun. They're joined together. We've got a real yin-yang thing going on for this particular new moon. Now, when Venus gets so close with the sun, when she is kissing the sun, she can burn up, like it's combust, they call it sometimes. Cazimi is actually more specific to just the degrees where it's right in that day where it's with the sun. And combust can be a conjunction when it's close to the sun, but not like necessarily right on it. It's still within a few degrees. So it's a really subtle distinction there. But when we have that Venus energy being consumed by the sun, just really like all the glory of sun energy and Venus, it can be too much sometimes, right? We just had that horrific fire in Maui. My heart goes out to everybody in Hawaii and Maui, because that's really like one of the worst fires we've had in a really long time. So a lot of people perished in that, and my heart goes out to anybody who is dealing with loss from that. But it's one example of this fiery kind of temperament of Venus when she's in Leo. She's retrograde. She's going back over things like, oh, did this work? Is this really how we want our resources, and things like that. Also, it accentuates the feminine principle in her warrior type personality. So We've had women in the news. We've got 3 women judges now who are indicting Trump. Whatever you think of Trump, personally, he's not my favorite, but he is being confronted by 3 women judges. So it'll be interesting to see how that feminine principle goes about in her warrior phase and taking on this former president. And one of those announcements was just like late last night, early this morning, so very close to that new moon, right in there with that Venus cazimi the sun. It'll be interesting. I've been waiting to see what would happen with Trump for a few years, because we had that great American eclipse in Leo a few years ago when Trump was still in office. And one of the things that they say during eclipses is the king must die. Now, it doesn't always have to be literal. It can be metaphorical, right? He just gets taken down. So I've been waiting, because it always seemed like, well, he's doing fine. So how does that eclipse wisdom really fit in with this? But now it's like catching up with him, now that we're at this Leo point of the astrology year again, and this time with this Venus retrograde in Leo at the same time. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out, right? Whichever way you're looking at that. So we've got all this fiery energy. Leo, if it feels unloved or unappreciated or unrespected, can become insecure or reactive. That's kind of the shadow side of Leo. So if you have planets in the fire signs or in Leo, or even sometimes the fixed signs, it can kind of, because, you know, if you're on the opposite side with a sign like Aquarius, it's also a fixed sign. The other fixed sign would be like Taurus and Scorpio. There can be a little bit of like dynamic tension going on there, because this new moon is happening in a fixed sign. It's happening in a fire sign. If you have one of the fire signs like Sagittarius, Aries, Leo, obviously, you can feel this maybe more intensely than somebody from another sign might feel. Also, it's at, I believe, 20 degrees. Where's this moon happening? Yeah, so this is going to be around 22 degrees. So if you have important signs in your chart, your own personal chart, around those degrees, that can also be like a subtle influence where you feel it a little more than maybe somebody from a different sign. Now, Venus is really interesting in the way that she appears to us from Earth. Of course, all the planets are going around the sun, and if you've seen like the more modern mock-ups of our solar system, you realize that it's not like the sun in the middle and the planets just statically like in the circle around it. The sun is also moving through space, so it's a 3D, more of a 3D. We've moved to the 3D, and the sun is pulling those planets, so it's like they're circling, but they're kind of circling and following the sun, which is a kind of blows your mind when you first think about it, because we've always seen it the other way around, with just this sort of static planets going around the sun. So Venus, and the way she appears from Earth in her orbit, I'm sure you've probably heard by now that she creates this pentacle in the sky, and probably that's where the pentacle came from. We don't have a lot of written records on that with like the ancient Celtic or Druidic religions, even the ancient Greeks and the ancient Mesopotamians and Sumerians observed the stars in the sky and noted the ways that they moved. And so this pentacle gets drawn from our perspective here on Earth, because when we see Venus, she's moving around the sun, and then she kind of goes retrograde, so it's like she does this little loop-to-loop from our perspective. Can't see her when she's right by the sun. So she goes into one of these, they call them Venus star points. She goes into them, and she's the evening star, And then she gets hidden by the sun. And we say that's when she's in her underground phase because we can't see her. And this is probably where some of the legends like Persephone would have come from, because you can't, she goes into the underworld and you can't see her. And she's supposed to be going through all these trials and working through like all the things that she values that she has to let go of in order to move forward. And then she reemerges on the other side, which she's doing right now. Already, because we're a couple of days from the 13th when she was exactly Cazimi. And she comes out as the morning star, and then you see her in the morning as the bringer of light, because she travels before the sun. And that's my little exercise I have for you for this lunation is, if you get up early one morning, or maybe make a point of getting up early, go out and look for Venus. She's extremely bright in the sky right now because she's close to the sun. She's reflecting a lot of light from our perspective here on Earth. And you can see her traveling ahead of the sun. So she's that light bringer, as she was known in ancient cultures. I woke up this morning at 4:30. I guess she was calling me. Went out, saw her in the sky, traveling near the constellation of Leo. And I just did a little devotion to her, to the feminine principle. I don't literally think of Venus as a goddess, like this embodied woman in the sky or something. But there is that principle that we associate with this planet that's very ancient, that's something that people observed around the energy of this particular planet and how it interacts with us here on Earth. So I did a little devotion to the planet Venus. I put out some of my hand-dyed yarn. It's like Venus definitely rules like the textile arts, the arts, beauty. So something that I consider beautiful, that I've made myself. I put it out there with a basket with a crystal, have sodalite, polished sodalite. I've just been associating this like turquoisey blue energy with Venus this lunation. So the crows are in the backyard. So we got a little visit from the Morrigan too. That's another feminine principle, feminine warrior. How appropriate for Venus in Leo. So I put those out under the starlight to be blessed by the planet Venus and to ask for blessings on my endeavors, like my work that I do with hand dyes, natural dyes. And she's also rules, to some degree, finances, because she's our values and our resources. So, this is something that I'm trying to make a little business out of. So I post those things on other media. And I just left it out there to be blessed by the light of Venus. And in keeping with all the things I just said, are my tarot card, because this is the major arcana card for Leo is the Strength card, and I'm hoping that my camera is focusing on that. I don't know if it helps if I, not really, but hopefully you can kind of see that. The Strength card, excuse me, is a woman, and she is often seen interacting with this lion, like subduing this lion, taming this lion, right? So Leo is this masculine energy, the lion representing Leo, obviously. And the feminine principle comes to tame it, because it's not so much like literally biologically, are you a man or a woman, but we all have masculine and feminine energies within us. It can be men or women, right? That's one fairly literal connotation of people in your life or in the world at large. Excuse me, having a little return of allergies. But the feminine principle in ourselves is the one that is usually calmer. I mean, this is a pretty classic male-female kind of connotation, that the male tends to be more the warrior, the action, right? And the feminine is the receptive principle, and the one who negotiates more. So you can use that feminine principle to calm any of the more reactive Leo energies going on. So if you're feeling insecure or something, you could become like reactive where you're defensive, let's say. Well, that feminine self-assurance that works with Leo is coming from inside ourselves. When we're feeling unloved or insecure, that's usually coming from things we expect from the outside of ourselves, how we expect other people to, or we hope that other people might act towards us. And if we're not seeing that, we can become sort of unhappy, right? Because we're not getting what we hope we might get. That feminine principle is working with our creative energy to be more from the inside, working its way out, right? That self-assurance, that confidence that we want to have, where we believe in ourselves. We don't wait for approval from the outside world. We find that within ourselves and bring it out. So that's, whoops, knocking things over. That's where the strength card comes from, that inner strength, our fortitude. And so that's our card to work with for this lunation. So we have a grand trine going on. You know, if we're looking at some of the other planets, there is, I gotta put on my glasses and look at my computer for that so I can remind myself. So it's between Uranus, Pluto, and then Mars and Mercury, which are pretty much conjunct at the moment. They're like 3 degrees apart, so I would call that conjunct. So Mercury and Mars, they're in Virgo. Virgo is our priestess energy, so that's reinforcing this Venus who's just burning really bright in Leo right now. And that trine then connects to Pluto, which is currently in a Capricorn because it's gone retrograde back into Capricorn. That's again our foundation. Pluto wants to transform that. It wants to make us move forward. A lot of times these are things we're not ready to move forward on. We're comfortable where we are. Pluto's like, you gotta go, right? And as I mentioned in my last forecast with the full moon previously, Venus, when she was retrograde last time, 18 months ago, that was in Capricorn. So this Pluto is now shaking this up. It's working. It's a continuation of that cycle with Venus, even though it's not aspecting it right now. It's bringing forward things that we might have decided about a year and a half ago. Now, Venus is a very complex planet from our perspective on Earth. With that pentagram she does, she goes through all the signs, all the cycles, and there are some really interesting cycles in there that recur. So right now with this Venus in Leo retrograde on the star point in Leo, it's a start of a new 8-year cycle. So you can look back at what you're doing 8 years ago, maybe 16 years ago, and see if there's any connections to what you're moving forward with now. It may be some similar type of approach to a different thing that you're doing in life. It could be all kinds of things, right? You would know that because I don't know what went on with you 8 years ago, whatever. But this is starting a new 8-year cycle, so we're beginning new things. We're finally moving forward from some of these like trips backwards that we've been doing over the last couple of years. All the major planets, the transpersonal planets, are going to be retrograde this summer. So we will still be doing letting go and going back over things. But that Pluto is definitely supporting the changes that you have been making going along. So even if you might not like what's going on, it's to move you forward. And then we've got the tip of that trine that we've got going on is in Uranus, which is still in Taurus. Taurus ruled by Venus, you can see like this Venus is really like moving things this summer. And she's been building this for a while. If you're looking back at that Capricorn that she was in a year and a half ago, she's been building this. So whatever this is, it's going to be changes. And they might happen suddenly. They might not feel good at first. It's the kind of thing you look back at and go, oh, that's the moment when I changed blah, blah, blah. So if you have any dramatic things going on, write them down during this lunation so that you can go back and reflect on it later. I've started writing a lot of things down in a journal. So when other astrologers are like, what were you doing 3 years ago? And I'm like, I don't know. So I'm starting to write them down so that I can try to see those patterns in my life. Venus also does, when she's retrograde, she goes retrograde for 40 days. And there's a lot of traditions that talk about this 40 days. You see a lot of them in the Bible because the Bible has a lot of history over time. But there were like the 40 days in the desert. There were the 40 years in the desert, the 40 days of the flood, the 40 days that Jesus went to meditate in the desert, right? And there's a lot of other ones in history. In Egypt, when they were doing a mummy, they would use 40 days for the embalming process. They're probably following these seasons of Venus that they've observed in the sky and how they tend to interact with things on Earth. 40 years is another one that Venus does. So she has 40-day cycles, and she also has 40-year cycles. So it takes a really long time for Venus to go all the way through every sign to get back to exactly where it was at your birth. And so we don't necessarily have a Venus return the way we do with, say, Saturn or something, because it's just so complicated. It has to be, like, for example, I was born with Venus in Leo, but this isn't my Venus return because when I was born, she was direct. She was in the superior conjunction. It wasn't this retrograde one where she's in the inferior conjunction. So very complex, and that's why I think people really respected that pentacle, because there's so many things that you could study in there, and I can't go into all of it or this will be really, really long. So I'm just going to leave it at that with the astrology. So we have the Sun, Venus, and the Moon all traveling together in Leo right at this time. Got like a triad. The number 3 is also associated with the goddess, so there's your feminine principle again. Even though Leo is a masculine sign, there's this really strong feminine energy that's traveling with it. And that triad, those 3 planets, the Moon, Sun, and Venus, those are kind of squaring that Jupiter in Taurus. So it's like there's a push-pull with this one, where there's a little bit of dynamic tension of like, I want to do the thing, but I don't know, I don't have the support, but can I do it myself? This sort of back and forth thing going on with it in Taurus, and also they're kind of squaring that Uranus. So there could be things that happen quickly that are maybe not so easy to deal with. But I think overall, it'll be a time you look back and things will have progressed in a way that they needed to. I don't want to say for the best, because we don't always like things that happen, but sometimes that's what needs to happen. Anyway, hopefully it will be good things for you. I hope that for you. So, yeah, the plant friends I forgot to think about. So let me come up with that on the spur of the moment. I think I'm going to go with sunny plants. So, sunflower, who knew? You can tincture sunflowers, and they are a good general tonic, kind of in the way that you think of alterative, like helping move things along in your system. You call that a blood cleaner in old, like, Appalachian type magic. But it's something that just helps kind of purify the system, I guess. I'm trying to think of the best way to describe that because it's not necessarily in a medical type terminology. So you could eat sunflower seeds, right? Roast sunflower seeds, and those are good. They have a lot of vitamins and minerals. Or you can tincture the sunflower heads, that sunny head, and take that sunshine medicine with you. Flower essence would be a good one to do with the sunflowers. I've done that, and it was a really bright, sunny kind of energy that helps you with optimism. If you suffer from sad in the winter, you can make sunflower medicine now and use that in the winter to help you kind of recapture some of that sunny energy in the colder months. And then the stones, I'm really attracted to the blue stones right now. So blue calcite, sodalite, even aquamarine. If you happen to catch my post that I did just a post, not a video, on my page. You might go back and look at that because I wrote a little thing for Venus during that, and I have a little picture that I'm going to start this video with that I did a couple years ago, actually, that I was inspired to do, and I feel like it's really fitting the lunation this year because, excuse me, allergies. Venus with her aquamarine eyes staring out, and I had done a little constellation of Leo in the painting, so she's been calling to me for a few years because I did that for Burning Man back in like 2008. Wait, let's see. If we go 8 years back, that would be 2015, and 8 years before that, 2007. So I probably did it 2007 because that's the first year I went to Burning Man. So Venus was already talking to me then. It would be really interesting if you can go back like 8 and then 16 years and you see any of these little trails for these things in your life. Let me know in the comments below because I love to hear about that kind of stuff. All right, this has gotten a little long, so I am going to go, and I wish you all a fantastic new moon in Leo. I hope you get lots of self-love going on and feel good about yourself, and I will see you in 2 weeks for the full moon. All right, see you later.